5 o'clock, man.
Thank you all. We will call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Myers, would you please call the roll?
Jennifer Ashburn.
Here.
Marianne Baxter.
Here.
Abby Bemis.
Here.
Diane Corso.
Here.
Anna Guerra.
Here.
Billy Hill.
Here.
David Miller.
Here.
Mark Pfeiffer.
Here.
Tim Schwanger.
Present.
Elizabeth Semler.
Here.
Tom Schra.
Here.
Jennifer Torres.
Here.
Levada Wilson.
Here.
Mike Zuloff.
Here.
Very good. Thank you. Committee members, our first item of business are minutes from the April 21st meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Next item of business is public comment. I would invite any members of the public with comments on tonight's agenda items to come to the podium.
Hi, my name's Toby Winery. I live at 1021 Tiffin Avenue in Sandusky. First of all, thanks for all your efforts in trying to go through all this stuff in all these weeks of time to take care of together in the city charter. The reason I stopped in this evening because I believe you're stuck discussing the issues of qualifications to be on the committees. And I am very adamant about that they have to live in the city of Sandusky. No ifs, ands, or buts. Even with this landmark situation coming up, that they want to get somebody from out of town. If they need somebody's opinion from out of town, we should pay for that opinion and present it, but they shouldn't represent the city. The city is represented by the people. How do we get these people? I understand that I heard it was compared to getting jury duty. It's not the same. Finding somebody guilty and listening to staff is a way big difference, number one. Number two, how do we get a fair amount of people involved? Well, it should be done by lottery. It's that simple. There's 9,000 people voted in 2016 for the school levy. That means there's 9,000 people that have an idea of what the city's doing. And everybody's opinion in the city means something, not just the 35 that get picked. Which brings me up to the percentage of people. And we have to understand and live with the understanding that we have 30% of minorities in town. Each committee should have at least 30% of representation. It's pretty simple. You keep calling those people in that lottery. If they want to participate, they will. People don't think it's a honor and a privilege. They think it's a good old boy situation. And they should only be able to serve 3 years. And they should only be able to serve one committee at a time. I don't mean to be, but Mr. Zuloff's been on here for 20 years in 3 different committees. There's not any other people up here.
24.
20,
if you
I'm
don't
sorry.
mind. Thank you.
As long as your hair is.
Yeah.
He's been there that long. At any point, we appreciate his opinions, but there are other opinions out there. And it should be noted in our charter that it's important that we get participation from the community, and that means it also from the minority community. You know, there should be probably 2 more on this board going through the rules. So our finance committee has a guy from Perkins in it. I don't care if they pay taxes in town. If they don't live in town, they don't live what it is to be living in Sandusky. And that's why we picked to live here. It has to do with innate love. And finally, fairness is what you're trying to create here. It just makes it fair. And when you have people on committees that were voted not to be a commissioner, but are now on a committee for 10 years, we voted him not to be on the committees anymore, or even the commission. It's just not right. Everybody should have a chance to give their 2 cents when the time comes up. And all you have to do is call and ask. If they don't want to give it, you call the next number. It's 9,000 people to go through to get 35. It's not that hard. But the good old boy thing has to stop. It has to be fair. And it has to be, represent all of the city, all the wards.
Thank you for your
Thank you
comments.
for your pardon.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
No.
Very good. We will continue on to this evening's items of business. I know in addition to the agenda, you received a few items of communication from the staff that have been researched and prepared. Mr. Orzak, did you have any preference on whether we present those or just tackle as they come up in the agenda?
You just tackle them as they go.
Okay. It's my intent with the agenda to have a similar format as to the last meeting. It's been quite some time since these were identified for further discussion. So I think a preliminary opportunity to share a perspective briefly, and then move on to a more targeted motion with an understanding of where the committee is at, makes this process run a little bit smoother. So we'll start moving down the list, and I would invite members to share what might jump out at them, their perspective for that item of the charter. So our first item that we identified to revisit and discuss is Section 13, Ordinance Enactment. Any members of the committee kind of wishing to share where their mind is at on this item?
Chair,
Unger?
I'd like to suggest as we move along that public property be excluded as far as it being an emergency measure. If you look at the second paragraph, there's like 3 words in there. It says, unless it be an emergency. The sale, lease, or transfer of property should never be an emergency. So I'm thinking that we need to either take the emergency clause out altogether or just exclude the purchase, sale, lease, or transfer of property as far as it should not be approved as an emergency. That's my thought.
Are there other items of this section that committee members anticipate wanting to see some change around?
Now, are we to the point, I think we were to the point where a motion to do something would be appropriate. We've discussed it.
I'll make it as a motion if for further discussion.
Well, what I was going to, I would like, because you brought it up, I'd like to add to that a little bit. I don't think it should ever be an emergency to sell a public park, for example, obviously, right? It also should happen with a public hearing. It also, I think, merits a recommendation from the Planning Commission to sell, to lease, or otherwise encumber any real estate or interest in real estate under the control of the city. It's just reasonable. It's public property. It just makes it much more difficult for some sort of arrangement, as it were. And I don't see why anybody would oppose a thorough review before selling public property. Now, there could be some exceptions. One exception comes to mind would be an encroachment license for somebody's dumpster on a parking lot, for example. There are trivial things. Another one would be a land bank property, or that sort of thing where it's low level, it's routine, it's not the sort of thing that would require extensive review. So I would make the motion that no city-owned interest in real property, that we incorporate the following words, that no city-owned interest in real property shall be sold, leased, or otherwise encumbered without action by the City Commission, nor without a public hearing, nor without a referral to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Commission, and no such action. I gotta play with this. Well, let's stop there, because I'm sure the law department would have to wordsmith it anyway. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Mr. Zulhoff, you had a few components to that. Could you repeat your motion?
I'm sorry, say again?
Could you repeat your motion for the group?
Yes, my motion would be to add the following provision, that no city-owned interest in real property shall be sold, leased, or otherwise encumbered without action by the City Commission, nor without a public hearing, nor without a referral to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Commission. Now, accepting the fact that we might have to wordsmith it to make it all proper and make it fit the section, but that's the motion. And I can provide a copy or an email or maybe send a picture of my notes here.
So your motion would be to introduce some additional steps, not just remove the emergency measure component of the charter.
Right, I think that's, the wording spells it out pretty well. It just ensures some public process before, and I can't see how it would ever be urgent to sell a piece of city property. Trivial exceptions aside, like, to repeat myself, the example of an encroachment license for a dumpster.
There's been a motion and a second. Committee members?
I have a question, and perhaps Mr. Hastings can answer. Can you give a hypothetical example of what an emergency situation might look like for a property sale? Because, oftentimes there's clauses put into contracts for protective reasons, and this could have been added for a hypothetical situation that might protect the city. I don't know.
Yeah, well, excuse me, it's always difficult to describe every single possible thing that might happen.
Right.
That the city, and it'd be up to the city commission itself to determine if it really is an emergency. I mean, we elect those people to do a job, and they don't have to make it an emergency. They could do it as a regular ordinance, the required readings and that sort of thing. And under the current charter language, the only way it can be done as an emergency is with a supermajority of the city commission. So there's always, even a small minority could block it as an emergency measure. As Mr. Zulhoff is speaking, I'm trying to come up with hypotheticals where, and I've certainly been involved in my career, situations where something had to be done right away. And that's what the emergent, and it's never done right away because it can only be done at a city commission meeting, which happens every 2 weeks or twice a month. And if you required 2 readings for everything, well, then you're putting a month delay in any sale or purchase. And sometimes we want to sell property, and I'm glad Mr. Zuloff limited it to real property, because the first things I heard were property. Well, that includes everything, paper clips, expired police cars and everything.
Madam Chair, I have to apologize. I started to say something, and then I kind of lost my thought. I intended to also include no such action shall be passed as emergency legislation. Now, we really need that.
Well, you do not have the floor. I'm the
I'm sorry.
parliamentarian. By commission rule, I'm the parliamentarian. I was willing to let you go a little bit, but with the permission
all I
of the
had.
chair.
That was it.
I am trying to answer a question that one of the other commission members had.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'm glad that we are limiting it to real property, but there's still like, somebody wants to come here and build the most amazing thing that we would love to see here. But there's at least if it has to go to planning commission, first has to go to planning commission, has to go to public hearing. That's like a 30 or 60 day delay right there. And then we have the 2 commission meetings. I mean, we couldn't sell a piece of real property through a summer.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that this is not necessary, that if it's a supermajority, my opinion is that an emergency with a supermajority and it going to the commission meeting, and people have the opportunity to come to a commission meeting, and they have the opportunity to provide their input and information, I think it should be left as it is.
I would second that.
Ms. Ashburn?
Has there ever been an emergency? Has it ever happened that there was an emergency and property had to be sold right away?
Defer to our team. Aware
Yeah,
of anything
I
in
don't know
recent
that I'm the right
history?
person to answer that, having been here less than 2 years. I certainly have been in other cities where there was emergency sale of property.
But if there was an
And
emergency
sometimes for
sale,
true
it would be
emergencies.
supermajority.
One situation has always come to mind where a street collapsed because of a water main break. There had to be an emergency situation. They had to stage equipment, they had to grant easements, all sorts of things had to be done very quickly.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Baxter?
Madam Chair, after reviewing all of the charter again, I personally feel that there's a lot of things in here that we really need to address to make our city government more effective. And I think that there's things in this section with the supermajority that they're not going to be able to go in and steal my property or something like that. So I feel that we should really put our efforts into things that are really going to make a difference with our community. So I think that this is fine as is, and I would leave it alone, personally.
Madam Chair, it's traditional. Now, wait a minute. Now, I haven't taken a turn. I made the motion. It's traditional for the person making the motion to speak in favor, explain their motion before we go into open discussion typically.
You did.
I haven't had a chance to do that. And also, someone asked a question that was not answered, which was, has it ever happened that we dispose of property under emergency? We have, during my tenure as a planning commissioner, I believe more than once, and I believe to the surprise of several people, and inadvisedly, by the way, I think it was a bad idea and unnecessary. It wasn't really an emergency, it was just convenient. So it has happened, and to the surprise, the public really wasn't aware of some of these, in particular vacations of right-of-ways. Okay. Also, it was enough of an issue that did it not go to the ballot? Such a proposal saying that the city can't sell specifically city parks. So there is a concern. Saying, we don't have to worry about it is unnecessary. I have to apologize. I intended to end that with no such action shall be passed with as an emergency or as emergency legislation, leaving out the most important part and the part that Mr. Schrunger was, I think, most concerned about. So I would hereby make the motion to amend my motion to include that language.
Okay.
That would
There's
need
been
a
a
second.
motion to amend. Is there a second?
Are we amending the motion, or are we voting on the?
No, you're amending to add the language that I intended to in the first place about the emergency.
The motion to amend needs a second right now.
I'll second that.
Okay. Are
Madam Chair,
there-
I think what they're really trying to get is to get the city more involved. Once again, the gentleman that was here earlier, he had stated the percentage of individuals that's not being fairly represented and how the information has actually gotten out there. We have actually had a couple of situations that I disagreed with land being transferred, be given to certain organizations or other things such as that belong to us as citizens that we were actually losing. And then it's just bringing more awareness and putting us in a better position, be it trying to get the information out there, get us to better understand as citizens exactly what we're giving away. And by putting in extra steps that he said, it puts us as citizens in a little bit more power to make a control on whether or not if we're actually getting the bang for the buck on what we're actually giving away. Because like I said, I never see any purpose of losing a park. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think that's what they're looking for, is just to get more control of exactly what in the future, if we're giving away property that we own, real property that we're giving away.
Anyone else?
Other perspectives?
Anybody else? I'll go again.
Ms. Wilson?
I just have a question. So with your motion, it is just adding more protection?
Right, we should only be discussing the amendment, which adds language that I intended to put in the first place. The stuff about the emergency.
If there's anybody else, go ahead.
Anybody else?
Call the question.
I don't think we can close debate that quick.
Mr. Schwanger?
The purpose of the emergency clause in this section, which if you look at 14, that's the actual emergency measures. The reason why this emergency measure is in 13 is, and I'm talking from experience, is that it limits the residents of the city of Sandusky the opportunity for a referendum to put it on the ballot if they decide to sell Lions Park, Shoreline Park. At one time, believe it or not, Shoreline Park was up for sale for condominiums back in the 80s. So the only reason why the emergency measure is in here is to prevent a referendum on the ordinance to sell park property. And that's why I had asked for that to be stricken from section 13 for an explanation.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to get some clarification as it relates to a recommendation by the Planning Commission. I understand Mr. Hastings' point of, yes, that would inherently delay as you sync up the cycles of Planning Commission meetings and so forth. But in hearing Mr. Zulaw speak, I don't know if it was clear to the rest of the commission that the city commission has the right to do stuff that is not consistent with the recommendation of the planning commission. If the planning commission voted for it or voted against it, passed that recommendation on to the city commission has the power and ability to supersede whatever the planning commission says. And I'm not sure that that was clear in Mr. Zulaw's motion. So I wanted to make sure I understood that.
Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Miller is correct, that the city commission does have the ability to reverse the planning commission.
Madam Chair, and going back to that, once again, a representation of equality within the city. Not really going way too off, but I do want to refresh in everyone's mind here on why I feel award system is so important. Because like he just said himself, the city commission can just basically make a decision for the entire community. And if we had a map here right now and ask every city commissioner where they lived, it's like within your home, if you have a leaky faucet, I don't know exactly that your faucet leaking, if it needs to be repaired. If I don't live on Larchmont, I don't know what the Larchmont area needs. I don't know what the Southside area needs in that particular situation. I think, once again, a lot of these issues is the power that our city commission has that goes above and beyond, like, of the planning commission that I'm aware of myself making several decisions saying that we do not agree with this, but then we have a group of commissioners that go to totally opposite direction of what even our planning commission is there for. I mean, that's what we have them there for.
Thank you, Mr. O. We're going to call for a vote. Mr. Zulhoff, I'm going to need your help to read your amended motion once more.
All right, so what we have on the table is a motion to amend the original motion. And the motion, if I have it right, is to add, no such action shall be passed as an emergency. That's it.
Madam Chair, I request that the whole motion be read.
Yes, I understand it's my responsibility to repeat
I
it back,
understand.
but I am not following.
Okay, but the first vote would be on the amendment, and then, but I'm happy to read the entire motion. All right. No city-owned interest in real property shall be sold, leased, or otherwise encumbered without action by the city commission, nor without a public hearing, nor without a referral to the planning commission, to the city, nor without a referral to the planning commission for recommendation to the city commission. No such action shall be passed as an emergency. And that last sentence is the amendment to the motion.
Mr. Hastings, do we need a vote on both making the
Yes, you'll
amendment
need
and
two
then
votes.
then itself?
On the amended,
So first, there's been a motion and a second to make that amendment. I'd ask for all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Aye.
Call the roll, please.
Somebody said aye 3 times.
One moment, please.
And again, to clarify, this first vote is to accept his amendment, which we will then vote on again.
I need you to respond by a yay or a nay to keep this correct. Jennifer Ashburn,
Yay.
Marianne Baxter,
Nay.
Abby Bemis,
Yay.
Diane Corso,
Nay.
Adriana Guerra,
Nay.
Billy Hill,
Yay.
David Miller,
Yay.
Mark Pfeiffer,
Nay.
Tim Schwanger,
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Nay.
Tom Schra,
Nay.
Jennifer Torres,
Nay.
Loveda Wilson,
Yay.
Mike Zuloff,
Yay.
7-7.
7-7.
The motion did not pass.
Okay. So that means we have the original motion left on the table, correct?
Correct.
Which we'll need to now vote on.
Madam Chair, can we reread that section, please, that part?
I'd be happy to read the original motion again.
Thank you.
No city-owned interest in real property shall be sold, leased, or otherwise encumbered without action by the city commission, nor without a public hearing, nor without a referral to the planning commission for recommendation to the city commission. And by the way, I included in the original motion acknowledgement that it might need wordsmithed by the law department to make it legal.
Could you please call the roll?
Jennifer Ashburn,
Yay.
Marianne Baxter,
Nay.
Abby Bemis,
Nay.
Diane Corso,
Nay.
Adriana Guerra,
Nay.
Billy Hill,
Yay.
David Miller. Mark Pfeiffer.
Nay.
Tim Schwanger.
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler.
Nay.
Tom Schra.
Nay.
Jennifer Torres.
Nay.
Levada Wilson.
Yay.
Mike Suloff.
Yay.
Fails.
Okay. I will continue on with Section 14, Emergency Measures. Are there any initial thoughts from committee members about changes that you would like to see in this section of the charter?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to leave Section 14 as is.
I will second that motion.
A motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none, if you could call the roll.
Jennifer Ashburn.
Yay.
Marianne Baxter.
Yay.
Abby Bemis.
Yay.
Diane Corso.
Yay.
Adriana Guerra.
Yay.
Billy Hill.
Yay.
David Miller.
Yay.
Pfeiffer.
Yay.
Tim Schwanger.
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler.
Yay.
Tom Schra.
Yay.
Jennifer Torres.
Yay.
Levada Wilson.
Yay.
Mike Suloff.
Yay.
Passed.
Thank you. The next item on our list was Section 16, Price and Mode of Publication. Thoughts? Mr. Schwanger.
Well, to move the program along, I'm going to make a motion that we do not amend Section 16 of the charter under price and mode of publication.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, just a quick question. Is it also posted, I know we listed in the register, is it also posted on the social media site and your website? Okay. Thank you.
Feel comfortable saying all in favor of leaving this the same? Say by yay?
Yay.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Section 25, expenditures.
Chair? I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the commission that the expenditure limit follows state law.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Discussion.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Schwanger.
I'd like to propose an amendment to that proposal and also include in that amendment the current dollar amount under the statutory city list that we had here. I think that if we don't include that initial amount, the public.
Can we have a motion before we, or a second before? I'll second that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought somebody did second it.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yes, it's
it was
been motion
seconded.
and seconded.
Sorry.
Hey, that's all right. I lost my train of thought. Never mind. No. I think it's important that we include that initial amount. Otherwise, the residents may see that as a little bit of, for lack of a better word, trickery. Because if you just worded state law, that they're not going to know what the state law amount is. So I think initially we need to include what it currently is under the statute.
That would need updated every
Yeah, that is updated annually by the
Why don't you
state.
say-
Well, right, what I'm saying is initially, that, and part of the wording would be that every year it would change 3%, or it may not change for 10 years. But
Yeah, I was going to say, the state, if we just follow state law, the state legislature can do whatever. They
Right.
could reduce it if they want.
I understand, but right now, I'm going to be a no vote if we don't include, in the name of transparency, what that dollar
Say
amount,
what it currently is,
what it
I
currently is,
suppose,
correct?
You would like to see that written in the charter?
Yes, but then also what the language would say after that, 3%. But I think we need the public to know what the base figure is as of today.
Madam Chair, for,
So I think there's been a motion to amend to have the change say follow state law currently 77,
Correct.
my understanding. So there's been a motion for an amendment. Is there a second to this amendment?
Second.
Second.
That was my point of order, is that we were discussing it without a second to the.
Well, we made it, so.
Madam
All right,
Chair,
Thank you.
could that be edited to say, like, the dollar amount and current state, like 77,000 or current state? I don't know, in my contracts work, we say then current rates when we contract. So I don't know if you can put the dollar, but after it, say like current state rates or value.
Madam Chair, that would be up to the commission. We're just a committee who makes recommendations. We're an advisory committee. We aren't to decide the language for the ballot committee, and I would think that would be handled by the commission. if they choose it.
I was about to be recognized. That strikes me as something more appropriate to put, every charter vote comes with an explanation.
Sure.
That's not going to be part of the charter language. Putting it as part of the charter language might make it confusing. People think when state law goes up to 80 or down to 50, that we're still at 77,250. So I don't think the 77,250 ought to be in the charter itself. But the point is well taken that as a principle of putting it on the ballot, will the citizens adopt the following language to follow state law, which is currently, and then the following language would be that we would remove that.
So I'd like to call for a vote on the amendment. Ms. Myers, could you do a roll call for this one? And then
yea
we
vote
would
will
return
be-
back to the original motion pending the outcome.
A yea vote will be that the amount will be placed in the legislation.
Correct.
Jennifer Ashburn?
Aye.
Mary Ann Baxter?
Nay.
Abby Bemis?
Nay.
Diane Corso?
nay.
Adriana Guerra?
Nay.
Billy Hill?
Yay.
Mark David Miller?
Nay.
Mark Pfeiffer?
Nay.
Tim Schwanger?
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler?
Nay.
Tom Schra?
Nay.
Jennifer Torres?
Nay.
Levada Wilson?
Nay.
Mike Zuloff?
Nay.
Fail.
Madam
So
Chair.
the
can we-
motion on the table would be to modify this section of the charter to state that we would, as opposed to the exceed 10,000, would follow state thresholds.
Madam Chair, there's also a section of there's also a component in here that talks about competitive quotes, anything over $1,000 for a competitive quote. Is there a way that we could change that to represent maybe a percentage? Because you've got your bid, which is, the higher threshold by Ohio Revised Code, and then this would be the quote, the competitive quote, which would be a smaller standard, so maybe it could be something like 15% instead of having to get a quote for everything that you're going to spend over $1,000. That could be a toilet paper.
That's a good point. Would you like to make that in the form of an amendment?
We can just, I was suggesting we add it to the current motion on the table to add a percentage for the quotes. 10% of what the current rate would be based on Ohio Revised Code.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Zulaf?
it's kind of almost a separate issue. I think it's a good point, and I'm happy Ms. Corso brought it up, but it's kind of separate. I think maybe it might be more productive to
Address item.
to address this and then address that
I have a
separately.
question about that, though. If we address it separately in two separate motions, does it go as two different charter amendments? Mr. Hastings?
Yeah, it could be done that way. The question in my mind that I was talking to my assistant about is, I think state law does cover that as well and sets an amount.
It covers competitive quotes as
Yeah,
well as
when you need to
competitive
have
bids.
competitive quotes.
Okay.
And I will not warn this commission, just point out to this commission that doing it to follow state law prevents the city commission from setting a lower number if that's what they want. There are a lot of charters in the state that are silent on this, but the legislative body does set its own limit.
Is there a way that we
Could you explain that again, Mr. Hastings?
Yeah, like the city of Beechwood where I was from, they set by ordinance the amount of expenditures limit. And they can change it by ordinance, which involves a commission meeting and could even be, and that way it can be not done a number of times. If the 77,250 strikes commissioners as too much, someone could run on that platform, get elected, and get his friends to vote for the same thing and set a different number. If our charter says we shall follow state law, then the commission cannot make that change.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zulaf?
So one might ask why we really need the provision. It sort of, in the first place, it kind of invites something that was well known in the industry, on the supply side of this stuff. They call it a wired bid. You know, you basically write the specifications, you know, to only allow a particular supplier. Not necessarily nefariously, but because someone feels that that's the best choice. But then never going out for bid kind of lets you kind of sidestep it. And there might be, first of all, how do you know there's no other supplier for sure other than the assertion that there isn't another one? Furthermore, how do you maybe tease out some counter proposals that are similar or better by just going public with it? And now there might be emergencies, but simply saying, hey, sorry, you know, there's only there's only one supplier that supplies chartreuse fire trucks, and therefore we're not going out for bid, not giving anybody a chance to propose a custom paint job. I'm being facetious about it, but the point is, why is this even? It's specious on its face. It's well, it's a great idea. There's only one supplier, but how do you know that? So, what is the difficulty in not even having that provision or just deferring to state law? I would suggest that you could strike it, but again, I might also suggest that it's kind of outside the, arguably outside the discussion of the motion on the table, and it perhaps should be discussed separately.
Mr. Hastings, so options for modifying this language might include following state law. Are you suggesting another might be?
Yeah, another option might be to get rid of the section, which would mean that state law is the default unless the commission, by its legislation, creates something else.
I think that's what I suggested, right?
Yeah.
We're in agreement, yeah.
Madam
Other
Chair.
questions or comments?
Yes,
Mr. Hill?
Kathy, this is your expertise, correct? I mean, financial, so, well, if not, then I'm trying to get an answer. What type of issue is this bringing up right now, the way it is currently handled right now?
I think we have a number of people here willing to talk about that.
Well, that's what I would like to, I would like to know what type of issue this is actually causing right now that we need to change.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out that Section 41 also talks about bids, which I think they're kind of attached a little bit, not really, but if they're going to speak about it in our heads, we should be thinking about Section 41 as well, so we can get the information like you asked, Mr. Hill, but we're going to be looking at the broader picture instead. Section 25, Section 41. 41.
Ms. Baxter? Mr. Klein or Mr. Orzak, care to comment?
I'll start and then Mr. Klein can jump in because he deals with it more often than most any other department. So some of the ordinances that we passed this year that this would impact, if it was 77,000, would be the HVAC replacement at Amtrak was 36,000. The trail at the golf course was 28,000. The promotional test for Sandusky Fire was 11,000. A controller for the irrigation system at Mills was 15,000. A demolition of a property was 42,000. Another demolition, 30,000. Chief Oliver has obviously some other things as well as all the departments. So basically, if there's anything over 10,000, which is pretty much everything that's in existence anymore, we have to go out and do a competitive bid, which entails doing an RFP process, which ties up staff for up to 53 days-ish every time we do that. And then it comes to the commission, and then they vote to have a $11,000 promotional test for the fire department, which could easily be done in another manner. So those are some of the challenges we've had buying vehicles. We couldn't buy cruisers. We had a backlog in cruisers that we needed to purchase, and we couldn't even purchase a cruiser because we had to do competitive bid and all that. And then there was cars on the lot that we couldn't purchase because of that process. So it hampers quite a bit of the staff and the time, especially for those low budgeted or low ticketed items that are in place these days. I'll let Aaron take over. I will just add that all of this information's available on our by our finance director, any of the transactions. The commission has to approve budgets prior to the expenditures at the beginning of the year. There's a lengthy process of that, so there's a lot of checks and balances in place. And it's difficult to do, and then you have villages and schools and townships and everybody else following state law, making the same transactions. We do get quotes on things to get the best price that we possibly can. That's a standard process. So, Aaron, if you want to talk about all your struggles.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I'm the Director of Public Works for the city. So I oversee the engineering department, also sewer and water, cemeteries, and some of those other street departments. So we buy a lot of equipment. There are times when there's a piece of equipment that might be up for auction. We can't act on it very quickly. Somebody else buys it. Another piece of equipment comes up. We can't act on it. So it's a repetitive process in that we might be losing out on something. Those are some of the minor issues that we deal with on a regular basis. Say we have to go through this bidding process. It will take one staff member a minimum of a 12 hours just to prepare the bid document to get it up and running. That's not including the specifications, the design, doing all of those things. And a lot of times when we go through this process, it doesn't allow certain contractors to even bid on the project. Say you have a small contractor and we have a project that's going out to bid, and that contractor doesn't have time to prepare it because he might be out in the field working because he doesn't have support staff. Maybe he can't do a bid bond or a bid guarantee. A lot of times we have to hire an outside consultant to prepare this specification, where if we didn't do that, we might be able to actually go ahead and talk to 3, 4, 5, 6 different contractors, get them all in the same room, say, hey, what's the best process of doing this? What's the best design? We have all of our ideas. Can you tweak this a little bit? And it actually helps out quite a bit, and it keeps the costs lower by doing it this way. Because then we don't have all the overhead costs. That's a lot of the big contractors that would add to it. We don't have to add insurance, the bonding, that's 3 to 5%, another 5% for the insurance. So you're talking for a project that might have been $15,000, now you're at $20,000, $25,000, and you're not even getting the small local contractor. You have to get a big contractor because they're the only ones that can actually put together the bid document. Those are a few of the items, not to mention, like the city manager said, the calendar time that it takes to bid a project. It's a minimum of 2 months from the time we have all the documents completed. To get to that point, it could be anywhere from 2 months to 6 months for a project under $75,000. You get to commission, it's another 2 months to bid and award the project, another week or two to. So if you've got a piece of HVAC equipment at our lab at the water plant, and you're now talking 8 months, and our staff is in jeopardy and safety issues and things like that. So it is an issue. It's a big issue. It's not only time consuming for staff, but it also actually costs the city a lot more money going through this process, having those soft costs. One thing I will say about the checks and balances, as the city manager said, we have the O&M budget. We also do the 5-year capital plan. Those things are all listed. Everything comes back to commission. If it is in that area, they look at it ahead of time. If it's above the 70 whatever thousand, whatever that number would end up being, it is a project that has to get permission to bid. But I think when it comes down to it, to answer something that was touched on earlier about sole sourcing type of a thing, you still have to get, if it's above that 10% or whatever that other number that was being discussed, you still have to get multiple quotes. Mm-hmm. That's in the requirements. So you can't just, if it right now it's $1,000, you can't just say I'm using this one person. And the way that our department would move forward with that is we would get primarily the local contractors or vendors and get them on board. And then we would, sometimes there's only 1 or 2 vendors that would sell a piece of equipment at our wastewater plant or at our water plant. So we get all of them in the room, find what's going to work best for us, and then we can do our checks and balances, do our due diligence. It's more like a design build type of a process than it would be for a design bid build. And that's one of the biggest things about the language in the charter, is it was developed before the state went through this process of updating all the bidding and contractual requirements in the 2010s. That's when they added design builds and construction manager at risk and all those other options. So technically, by the way that it's written, it's something that we would have to bid every single project through that design bid build process. So I could stand up here for another 6 hours and talk about this, but I'm sure nobody wants that. Let me know if there's any more questions.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Schwein.
Mr. Klein. Your department has the ability of, like say at the water treatment plant, a boiler goes out or an important pump. You can purchase that without a bid and then come back to the city commission at the next meeting for approval. Is Is that fair to say?
So I would defer to the law director about exactly what it says. My understanding in the way that I've been told, but we've never actually done, is that with the approval of the city manager, maybe we can do it. But we've always gone to the commission to get that approval. Sometimes if it's a drop dead emergency, like we're not going to be able to supply water to the community, we'll shoot out an email to the commission, let them know that it's coming so that they're not caught off guard when it does come. And that's like an extreme emergency that we're putting people's health and safety at risk.
Yeah, and that would be assuming that the supplier is willing to deliver the piece of equipment without getting paid until the commission approves it. We cannot pay them without the commission approval.
Right.
And there are suppliers in this world that will wait for that approval, unless we have it somewhere else.
Okay, I know it's happened before. It's not very often, but we do have that power that if it is an emergency to go out and get it, and then the legislation comes back a week or two later for commission to approve, if it's over whatever amount.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have, you're correct in saying we have the power. We cannot bind the city under our current charter without going through the commission, period.
Oh, yeah, no, it's been brought up like under a city manager's report that, this is broken, we need action right now, so let's do it. And then legislation would be coming forward at a subsequent meeting.
Right, there is.
And that's been done.
Right. And so long as the commission approves it after the fact, then I think the state auditors are okay.
Right.
But if they don't, then there's an issue.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Zoloff?
so I think it's astute of the member to point out the relationship with Section 41. But again, it's another little bit of a can of worms that could stand on its own as a discussion. I would therefore propose that we make the motion that we suspend the debate and vote, AKA call the question.
Through you, Madam Chair. There was one.
It's not a, I mean, it's like,
He just interrupted him.
so is that, are we moving on for lack of a second here, or? Because it's not a debatable, calling
Trying to call the question. I got questions before the question is called. I don't know how to deal with that.
Right, but it's not a debatable motion.
Could you help us here? What are our options?
Yeah, he's technically correct. To call the question, if there is a second, is a priority motion.
Right. I was just raising the question, is there a second? If not, it dies, and then Mr. Miller, but we should acknowledge that. Sorry.
Second. Hearing none. Mr. Miller?
Yeah, it was just a small point, but I was surprised in Mr. Orzek's example of buying a new cruiser. I had understood a previous example of an undercover car, but is the city not able to buy off-state term contracts for patrol cars and things of that nature?
Yes, sir, we're allowed, most of our purchases for vehicles or equipment are off the state, but when we were,
So if there's something on the lot, you want-
manufacturers weren't producing the vehicles, and the chief had an order in 2022, for example. We had 6 cruisers ordered. They wouldn't fill the order. We had to redo it in 2024 or 23 or whatever year it was. And there was an exact cruiser sitting in Huron, or a vehicle sitting in Huron, that we could have purchased one cruiser, and our cruisers were up to 200,000 miles. So it was a manufacturing issue just after COVID and all that. So.
I understand, thank you.
More discussion?
Mr. Schwager?
So there's another section of, a paragraph of section 25 that needs to be discussed. So are we going to include that in like one big motion, or are we going to try to do this, individually? First, the amount of expenditure, and then any other part that might be of concern or,
Yes.
okay,
I'd prefer to do it that way.
okay.
Mr. Hastings, the competitive quote amount within state law, are we able to obtain that? Can you share that with the committee either now or at the next meeting?
Right now, it's $77,250, $77,250.
That's the competitive
Because I think we
bid
should
amount,
separate.
correct?
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a can of worms.
And does it specify competitive quotations, a threshold for that?
For purchases less than that?
Yes, like ours says an amount in excess of $1,000 is
Yeah, no,
involved.
Ours does say an amount less than that. And I don't know precisely the answer to that. I want to say it's up to $77,250, but a lot of cities will have internal policies where the city manager or mayor says, anytime you spend more than $10,000, I want to see 2 or 3 quotes.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, does the city of Sandusky have that policy?
Yes,
Okay.
for $1,000, because we have to follow this.
So what would be your recommendation if the $1,000 wasn't there?
My recommendation would be maybe 5, but I wouldn't do more than that. We need to have competitive quotes from individuals, so the more leeway you give individuals, the less it's in black and white, so I wouldn't go more than 5, but that's just my opinion.
Fair enough.
Thank you. So there is a motion on the table for modifying this section of the charter to eliminate the expenditure exceeding $10,000 requiring competitive bidding and instead modifying language that it should follow state law. I think we'd rely on Mr. Hastings to bring us a draft of wording at a future meeting, but that's the motion on the table. I would call for a vote.
Yay is to modify to state law. Jennifer Ashburn,
Yay.
Marianne Baxter,
Yay.
Abby Bemis,
Yay.
Diane Corso,
Yay.
Adriana Guerra,
Yay.
Billy Hill,
Yay.
David Miller,
Yay.
Mark Pfeiffer,
Yay.
Tim Schwanger,
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Yay.
Tom Schra,
Yay.
Jennifer Torres,
Yay.
Levada Wilson,
Yay.
Mike Zuloff,
Yay.
pass.
Thank you. Hearing there may be interest in further modification to this section. Mr. Schwanger?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Paragraph number 4, which pertains to real property owned by the city of Sandusky, may be sold or leased without the need for competitive bidding, as long as we're following state law. I recommend we follow state law in this regard too. The state law, which is 721.03, requires property sold or leased go through the bidding process. Our charter currently does not provide for that.
You named a section of state law?
Yeah, that would be specifically, the state law is 721 under municipalities, and it pertains to the sale or lease of property. And it states that it will go out for bid. Right now, in our charter, it does not require competitive bidding.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
I'll second it.
Discussion. Is there any further context on the state law section?
This is something you might want to hear from our development director. The sale of real property is a key tool in city development. Requiring competitive bidding means that you can't sell it to, you want a hospital here, but somebody who wants to manufacture widgets would pay more for that piece of property. Might require you to sell it to the manufacturer of widgets rather than put in a hospital. This is a charter section that is key for Sandusky for community development. I
Madam
mean, for
Chair.
example, the very popular, Home Ohio, what is it, Welcome Home Ohio program involves selling property for less than fair market value, actually for less than what we pay for it. But we are being funded by the state of Ohio to do that.
Mr. Hastings? Madam Chair?
Yes.
So if we would go to the Ohio Revised Code, would it hamper the city's ability to do business? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
In this case, as a home rule city, and please don't take me down that rabbit hole too long, we are allowed to do things differently than what state law provides.
Okay.
So long as it's not a matter of local self-control, so long as it doesn't affect the health and welfare of employees and yada, 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 so many exceptions. A home rule city like ours is allowed to do things differently than what state law would provide.
The process of competitive bids, you must accept.
Well, it doesn't really, I guess state law doesn't really say that, but, because you get to accept the most responsible bid.
Right.
I guess if somebody, who doesn't have the cash or whatever bids, we don't have to accept that bid. But it does create issues if there is a piece of property that we think it would be in the best interest of city to, even for example, to sell to somebody to expand an amusement park, or to sell to somebody to, my hospital example, more housing. I mean, they're all different things that we try to do. And also, even if competing manufacturers, one manufacturer has a payroll of nothing but robots, and another manufacturer is willing to provide lots and lots of jobs for the community, we might be very well willing to sell that piece of land to the entity providing jobs.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Schloff?
So I think it's a good idea to invite a public process and to invite proposals when disposing of a piece of land. And it would have a similar effect to what we voted down of making the process more open and more public. And it would be best if we did this to make it explicit that it's up to the city commission to decide what's the highest and best proposal, right? So it wouldn't solely be, how many dollars are you getting for the property? You'd also have to consider what else is happening. Is it going to be a hospital, or is it going to be a landfill, just to take it to the absurd level, right? So provided that you're clear that the city commission gets to decide, then maybe it's not a terrible idea to make sure that you open the door to other proposals within a reasonable amount of time. Now, we have from time to time been successful in inviting proposals. It's RFP, as you might, the request for a proposal, right? It's not a competitive bid to sell the property outright. The Chesapeake Lofts was highly successful, in my opinion, in that it was a request for proposal. There were three serious qualified proposers, developers in that. Any of the three would have been good projects. The city commission got to decide, which one they liked the best. And trust me, it wasn't based on who was going to pay the most for the property. Although, to the best of my recollection, the developer did wind up paying more than the city paid for it. The city, very wisely, we had that white elephant on the lake, that Chesapeake paper factory sitting empty for a long time. What are you going to do with it? The city wisely bought it and invited proposals from developers. Now, it got some excitement in the development community. 3 solid proposals. So that was a very public process, and it worked.
So the motion on the table is to modify this section of the charter to say that real property owned by the city must also follow state law, correct?
Yep.
Ms. Myers, if you could call the roll.
A yay will be in favor of this. Jennifer Ashburn,
Nay.
Marianne Baxter,
Nay.
Abby Bemis,
Nay.
Diane Corso,
Nay.
Adriana Guerra,
Nay.
Billy Hill,
Nay.
David Miller,
Nay.
Mark Pfeiffer,
Nay.
Tim Schwanger,
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Nay.
Tom Shara,
Nay.
Jennifer Torres,
Nay.
Levada Wilson,
Nay.
Mike Zula,
A pointless and symbolic yay.
that failed.
Thank you. Moving on to section 27, civil service.
Madam Chair, do we still need to address this $1,000 for competitive quotations? If so, I'd like to make a motion to change that to either strike it, and, well, it has to be one or the other. So I guess we'll make a motion to change that, eliminate it completely from.
Second.
Motion and a second. Although, Mr. Hastings, will you be getting back to us as to whether this is specifically addressed in state law?
Yeah, yes, we will.
You will.
And then we will also propose some language to you as well.
So why don't I table that item?
That will be fine, thank you.
Very good. Okay, so moving on to section 27, civil service.
Madam Chair, Chief Oliver's here on that subject, if he could address the board, commission.
Please.
I thought we were going to talk more about expenditures, so.
Joe.
No, Chief, I'm hoping not.
I'm kidding. Just to give you a little bit of background with what's going on in public safety, not just law enforcement, there's some issues with fire, not here locally, but it's sort of permeating out. We are constantly looking for recruits in law enforcement. Currently, our police department's budgeted for 53. We're at 50. We've been as low as 42 since 2020. And in that, academies are not filling up. Academies are not running because there's a minimum of cadets. You have to have 10. We're Sandusky. Just imagine Cleveland, Toledo, Lorraine, everybody pulling from around the area. What we're looking to do, and we've had very, very good support from our Civil Service Commission. They are great to work with. But I'd like you guys to evaluate our civil service eligibility lists. We have closed eligibility lists. So there's only a certain time frame when you can apply for the Sandusky Police Department. And that is very, very cumbersome for us. So what we do is we go into the academies or we go recruit people, and there's cadets that are 21, 22 years old that are putting themselves through the academy, which probably costs anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000, $13,000. They're working part-time, they're going full-time, and they're looking to go in full-time in law enforcement. So we'll go in and we'll recruit, and we'll have people that want to work for the Sandusky Police Department, and I'll have to tell them, hey, just wait about 45 days because we're going to post an eligibility list. And in 45 days, you can apply. And then that eligibility list, we have to keep the testing procedure open for about 30 to 45 days, depending on that. So in about 70 to 80 days, we can actually interview you. And in the meantime, don't take full-time employment anywhere else. You can understand that hasn't gone too well for us. We need to have the opportunity that I used to work for the sheriff's office. I worked 20 years at the sheriff's office. I know local law enforcement. Every other local law enforcement agency follows state law. Basically, if you have a qualified candidate who puts his or her application in and it matches the qualification for what the state law is for their civil service requirements, township have different requirements, again, according to state law, you can interview that candidate. And you can see if that candidate's going to be a successful candidate for your police department. Our most recent eligibility list just closed. Again, we're down 3 officers. We had 12 people take the test, 9 people passed the test, And then 5 people showed up for our physical agility test, which you have to take to successfully be on our list. Our eligibility list has to have 6 people to even be an open eligibility list. We had the 6th person take the physical agility test. He was away at guard duty, so we gave him the opportunity, obviously, to take our eligibility, take that test. He passed, and only because he passed are we even able to have a current eligibility list. Had he not passed, or had he not came and taken that test, we still wouldn't have been able to hire anybody, and we'd have to start the process all over again. Used to be our eligibility list. I say ours. The city manager was police chief many years ago. Those eligibility lists might have had, at a minimum, 45, 50 names on it. In the past, they've had 200 names on it. Again, we have 6 on our current list, and we're looking for 3 full-time officers. So we've been able to navigate the waters thanks to our law department researching things for us, and thanks for our Civil Service Commission for giving us opportunities at lateral candidates and sort of relaxing some of those measures. But if we don't relax this, we're never going to get to where we need to be as a police department. And this is just happening to police now, but I promise you, the fire departments and bigger agencies are seeing this. Public safety, it's a noble profession. I would have selected nothing else for my life. But again, when I went to school, you wanted to be a nurse, a firefighter, a teacher, or a cop. It's not that way anymore. So we have to get with the times and where we're at. And all I want is the same opportunity that every other police department around here has. And if we see somebody that we identify it's going to be great to work for our city, we want to have the opportunity to talk to him or her. And we don't have that now. We have to negotiate with them to be patient. And I don't think that's fair to the candidate either, to be honest with you.
Madam Chair, I think it's fair to guess that no one here is prepared to make a specific motion with specific wording to amend the section to achieve what Chief Oliver wishes to accomplish. I would therefore propose that we ask the law department to draft an amendment or an amendment to this section that achieves precisely what the minutes will show Chief Oliver suggested that we do. We could make that a motion how about making that a motion?
Hadn't he mentioned state law?
Yeah,
Isn't there state law that opens all that?
It's spoke about in the, it's actually not spoke about, it's written into the Ohio Revised Code, how the hiring procedure can be. Again, I'll refer to the law department, but what most agencies do, there are still some that have eligibility lists. The city of Norwalk, Chief Dahlgren, who used to work for us at the police department, they're down 5 officers now, or 4. They're going through the same thing. They actually had 2 people take their test. So he's asking me what we're doing so he can bring it back to Norwalk Municipal too. But City of Cleveland, down hundreds of officers over the years. They follow state law. Again, our law director came from that area. They do a 1-day hiring blitz. They have everybody come in. They talk to all the applicants. They do the interviews, and it's successful. We're not looking for anything other than the opportunity to match what other departments are allowed to do through state law. And just if there is a candidate or 2 who successfully complete what we need them to complete and they're a qualified applicant, we want to be able to review that.
So, Madam Chair, so following the state law would accomplish, in your mind, what you would like to accomplish?
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion that we amend that to follow the state law.
I'd second.
Comfortable?
Discussion?
Madam Chair,
Discussion?
if I get emotional, I lost a child to gun violence. So one thing I can say about our officers, they do a phenomenal job.
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Mr. Oliver has talked many times. And what they have done to keep our community safe with the increase of gun violence. I always say I think they're batting 1,000%. I think almost everyone that has actually committed murder has been arrested, apprehended, and has been faced justice, and that's it. So what they are actually asking for, maybe when I was 19, you can probably tell you when I was younger, my mindset might be.
Madam Chair, could I ask the member to speak up or speak into a microphone? One or the other, please.
Well, when I was 19, I might have been a little bit different. But getting wiser, older, and having kids and having the go through something that no parent should have to go through, losing a child through gun violence. They definitely need to get all the assistance that he definitely needs. Being well in tune with our community still, due to my business and being in touch with younger kids all the time. And I tell all parents, you know, when your kid comes in, be a nosy parent. Check his book bag. Check underneath his bed, because we have an overwhelming amount of guns coming into our community. So if it's going to help him to get more officers out there to keep us safe, I'm in 100% agreeing with that. But anytime I get the opportunity, and this is what this fund is for, really, is to say, man, I appreciate you, and so does my family. So.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody and your support. We really do.
Mr. Schwanger?
Is the motion to take all this out of the charter and just one sentence, follow state law, or is there a certain portion in here that we need to follow state law? I mean, there's some stuff in here that you might not want to.
Well, there's other stuff in there that doesn't work for us either. Publication and time constraints and different things like that. Again, we're always going to publicize. We spend thousands of dollars in recruitment activity, and you saw the billboards, and we're on radio, and we're in the paper, and we're on social media. But again, anytime there's a constraint of a time frame where you have to do this for 30 days, you have to do this for 45 days, there's a 60-day time frame in there. What you have to see from our side is that hinders us in our recruitment effort to get candidates on the streets, training, so we can keep the public safe and get them. For instance, our eligibility list right now, so we're in May. It's going to take, another 4 to 6 weeks to finish all the pre-employment testing procedures that we do, which it's fine, but we're at the mercy of scheduling appointments and different things like that. So there's your 6-week window. We get that officer sworn in, and now they're going to go into training for 3 or 4 months. So by the time they're trained, which is definitely needed, I'm not saying anything about that. We take our time with training these cadets and the officers, but by the time we have that officer completely trained, where we're comfortable in him or her going out and on patrol, in this particular time, it'll be November. Well, the city slows down. Like our activity is right now. And the sooner the better. So anything we can do to relax those time constraints, I'd look to do, but I don't want to get ahead of myself in the law department, because that's where they're the experts.
Yeah, and what I would ask for is even more flexibility than just following state law. Civil service is one of those areas that, as a home rule city, we can build into the charter maximum flexibility for ourselves to anticipate these problems and others. And I would like to draft something along those lines.
Madam Chair.
So is the motion on the floor that we're going to have you draft it and then bring it back?
Yes.
Point of order,
The
no.
motion on the floor, I believe, is to modify to state law, but if someone would like to amend their motion.
Could I amend it?
Was it your motion?
It's my motion. I'm happy to, that sounds like a great plan. I'm very happy to amend it to
I
that.
can amend his motion. I'm going to take that amendment. We don't need to vote on that, or do we?
You could do it by acclamation.
All in favor of that amendment? Aye. Very good. And then, Ms. Myers, could you call the roll for the current?
I'm sorry, the vote now is, what was the amendment?
To await Mr. Hastings' additional information, and so probably to table, I would think, on this until we get more information, yes?
Or to direct Mr. Hastings?
Yeah, whether you table it or
prepare
vote to
language?
have me do it, I will do it.
I'm still not quite
However
sure.
I need to say it, pretend that I said it that way, all right?
I would perhaps direct
I think
Mr.
we-
Hastings to
we all-
draft
we-
language
Yeah,
for
we all have the
maximum
intent in mind.
flexibility.
Your
That sounds
motion.
perfect. That's
Okay.
exactly how
For the
I would
law
have said it.
department to draft the legislation. He deferred
Well,
to your
effectively it is.
motion.
I made the motion, nobody seconded it, and then we proposed just following state law, and that was seconded, and now we're back to more or less what I said, have the law department.
Is that all right?
Yeah, well,
Got it.
and I
Okay.
actually interpreted, state law does allow us to have civil service. That's what state law says.
Right, and this would allow you to propose something even better than state law.
Well, no, it will follow state law. I'm I have language in my head of other charters that say, as a charter city, the city of Sandusky intends to use its civil service powers to the maximum extent allowed by state law.
I look forward to the chance to vote yes.
So we need a second on Mr. Zulaf's motion.
Second.
David,
I didn't,
you made a motion.
I made a
don't know what
motion
we're voting on.
earlier, it wasn't seconded. Then,
I
Second.
think the motion came from over there.
no, someone else made a motion later that was seconded. That was just,
I believe the current
Just
motion
vote.
on the table comes from Dr. Piper, and it is to direct Mr. Hastings to prepare language for us that would allow for maximum flexibility in hiring our civil service positions.
perfect.
There's state law.
Exactly what I said.
And I believe there was a second.
Yes.
And I believe we're going to call for a roll vote. Thank you.
I like it.
Jennifer Ashburn,
Yay.
Marianne Baxter,
Yay.
Abby Bemis,
Yay.
Diane Corso,
Yay.
Adriana Guerra,
Yay.
Billy Hill,
Yay.
David Miller, Mark Pfeiffer,
Yay.
Tim Schwanger,
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Yay.
Tom Schra,
Yay.
Jennifer Torres,
Yay.
Levada Wilson,
Yay.
and Mike Zulaf.
Yes.
Pass.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate your help.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
It is 6:30, but as we've mentioned at the last couple of meetings, we have a long list ahead of us, so I'd like to continue, or I think we shall run out of time in the process. Okay. Next section for review is section 28, other boards and departments. It's the pleasure of the committee.
Madam Chair, I don't recall what the issues were here that led us to review this. Can anybody offer why we were concerned?
With that in mind, Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to keep it as is.
Is there a second?
Second.
So opening for discussion. The motion on the table is to keep as is, if there's anyone that feels differently.
I have a question.
Mr. Schwanger?
I understand the department part of this, but what does it, how do boards come into play here in this section?
Well, I guess it basically indicates that the city commission has the power to appoint boards, create them, appoint membership. And the city commission has the power to create new departments if the future requires a department of artificial intelligence. I don't know, but,
Oh, that's a good example.
yeah.
But 28 and 29, I mean, we do have a 29, which is advisory boards, which is commissions, boards, committees.
Yeah, no, those two are read together. Maybe 28, you could take the word board out of the title.
I mean, it's no big deal. I just want clarification of,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Zulhoff?
it would seem that 29 is kind of allows or is geared toward more ad hoc or committees, so that sort of thing. I think we have a blue ribbon commission right now. Would that fall under that category? I would,
Blue Ribbon's Erie County.
what's that?
Blue Ribbon is Erie County, not the city.
Oh, yeah, okay, never mind that one. But again, it's still perhaps an example of an ad hoc committee. I don't see the problem with it. It would seem that both 26 or 28 and 29 ought to be left alone. And I think they're kind of drawing a distinction with 29, that it's not exactly the same as what they were talking about in 28.
Madam Chair. Over here.
Oh, yes.
The recent board that we had, advisory board, was the Recreation Advisory, Rec Center Advisory Board, which was, I think, late last year or whatever. So that was under that, I believe, that was just put together certain task and then dissolved. It wasn't a recurring one.
AKA ad hoc, right? Yeah.
I was trying to support you.
Yeah, no, it's good. Good clarification. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I kind of assumed that it's a stupid assumption to think that everybody knows what ad hoc is. I barely know.
My recollection was that these were flagged by a member of the committee early on about a potential residency requirement for participating in, or was that a different section of the charter?
29.
I think so.
That would make sense. And term limits, I think that's the other part of it.
And term limits. That's what the initial concern was and what we heard from a member visiting tonight, member of the public visiting tonight.
Madam Chair, in the first line of Section 29, it does says citizens qualified to act. I don't know what that entails, but does that mean they have to be a resident, Mr. Hastings? Section 29, the first sentence.
No, that does not mean residents.
Okay.
That does mean someone who is a citizen of the United States.
Madam Chair.
Interesting.
So it doesn't refer to citizens of.
So, yeah, sometimes it's like, well, why should we allow anybody to ever advise the city commission if they're not a resident here? Well, I think it's really should be up to the city commission, the elected, democratically elected board of commissioners to decide who they should take advice from, and trying to prohibit them from taking advice from somebody because they don't happen to reside here in the moment would be, you know, a little bit, I don't know, parochial, a little bit, I don't know, the word escapes me, but let them decide who they listen to. We elected them because they're, for their wisdom, presumably, so.
Yeah, if I may address this, Chair, we had the recent example of the Landmarks Commission to be a recognized Landmarks Commission for the federal government, where we get many benefits. Certain expertise has to be on the Landmarks Commission, whether it's attorney or historian. They give a list of expertise that have to be on the Landmarks Commission. And we've had a very difficult time trying to fill those expertise slots for that commission so it can continue to be recognized as a local Landmarks Commission. What the proposal, I don't think it's been voted on yet, but it went through the Planning Commission, was that
We have to have a public hearing.
Right. We're not there yet. But the proposal is that a person have a significant contact with the city of Sandusky, such as owning a business, working here, even though they may not be a resident. And it would be up to the commission to determine whether that their connection to the city of Sandusky was sufficient.
By the way,
Thank you very
Madam Chair.
Good example.
Madam Chair, the proposed legislation doesn't require that they take, it limits it to 2 and allows up to 2, but no more than 2. So it's still pretty heavily leaning toward local control.
Yeah, the locals cannot vote them every time.
And we had in particular one member in the past, before the legislation was changed, that was particularly qualified, particularly helpful, had ties to the community, just technically didn't live here. So I hope we have other, if needed, I hope the City Commission has that option in the future.
Mr. Schwager?
Yes, we have a process, Kathy, right, where we have on our website a list of all the committees,
Yes.
and then we apply for those committees or more than one committee if we so desire, and then you kind of go through the list of those names.
I keep all
Okay.
applications, and when an opening will occur, I will give them to the clerk to share with that committee.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion then that we, I'm sorry.
Current motion on the table is to keep the language as is, so.
28, or 28, right?
28.
Oh, 28, I thought we were on 29, I'm sorry.
I call the question on 28? I call the
Yes.
question.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're talking about 29, I thought, but
I think they're very interconnected.
Discussion
so I
took
think
us to
we're tackling
29, but the
both,
proposal was for 28.
Yes.
The way I remember it.
So we're currently taking a vote as to whether we would keep section 28 the same. That is the motion on the table.
Okay. Jennifer Ashburn,
Yes, aye.
Marianne Baxter,
Yay.
Abby Bemis,
Yes.
Diane Corso,
Aye.
Ivana Guerra,
Are we not allowed to say
Yay.
Billy Hill, David Miller,
Yay.
Mark Pfeiffer,
Yay.
Tim Schwanger,
yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Yay.
Tom Sherraw,
Yay.
Jennifer Torres,
Yay.
Levada Wilson,
Yay.
Mike Zula.
And an easier vote to distinguish between nay and yay is yes. My vote is yes.
Passes. We're keeping it the same.
Mr. Schwab, did you have something?
Yes, 29. In light of the gentleman earlier today talking about giving Sandusky residents priority applications for these different boards and committees, and I hear it out in the community too, the same thing, that we should have residents first. I'm going to make a motion to direct the law director to provide language that would give Sandusky residents who have applied for these positions priority, not exclusive, but priority over being selected.
And that's kind of the way the landmarks proposed legislation is drafted as well. Yeah.
I'd second that.
Okay. Could you call the roll?
Yes will be in favor. Or yay. Jennifer Ashburn,
Yay.
Marianne Baxter,
Yes.
Abby Bemis,
Yes.
Diane Corso,
Yes.
Adriana Guerra,
Yes.
Billy Hill,
Yay.
David Miller,
Yay.
Mark Pfeiffer,
Yay.
Tim Schwanger,
Yay.
Elizabeth Semler,
Yes.
Tom Sherraw,
Yay.
Jennifer Torres,
Yay.
Veda Wilson,
Yay.
Mike Zula,
Yes.
pass.
Thank you. Section 41, bids in excess of estimate. Perspectives from the committee or a motion? Mr. Schwanger?
Madam Chairman, I will move to increase that percentage from 10% to 20%. We'll double it up.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay. Discussion.
There's no second, or there is?
It was
Mr. Hill?
second.
Thank you, I couldn't hear it. You have no microphone and you're not speaking very loudly. Thank you.
You heard that? Second. Right.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Baxter?
Mr. Orzak, would this, a 20% increase or 10% increase hamper the city in any way?
I don't believe so, but I'll defer to Mr. Klein. He's the guru.
No, it definitely would not hamper us. In fact, it would, all these would still have to come back to commission for a vote. So if it's budgeted or not, we'd still have to come back here to make sure that it passed.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Zulhoff?
there was discussion that led us to putting this on the agenda, that I understand that 15% is a state law, and that if we struck this provision, we would simply be following state law. That's the way I remember it. Is that accurate, or is there, did I misunderstand that?
If we just struck it as a charter city, it's a matter of local self-control. We can set it where we want. But in that case, we would do it by commission ordinance. if we could also do it by charter, which is what I've heard the proposal to be.
Right, but state law is 15%. I think
Yeah.
that's cogent to the discussion. I might ask, would it be better to just simply follow state law? Because we know that we're well aware of the ultimate wisdom in Columbus and how they thoroughly discuss and consider everything before they vote. So.
Maybe we think we're a little smarter.
Mr. Hastings, I feel I could use kind of a layman's, or Mr. Klein, layman's interpretation. What's happening in this statement here? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, we've had many examples, and of course, under our current charter, for example, if something came in at $11,001 because we estimated it was going to be $10,000, we had to send it out to bid because it was $10,000, and the price came back at $11,100, we'd have to start the process all over again, because we cannot accept a bid more than 10%.
Okay, so if we are changing the bid section of the charter to match state law of the 77,000, the 10% would be based on the new
Would be based
threshold.
on that, that's right. So that's the more important number. But the 10% is a little bit limiting. I mean, we've had a number of projects that, and it all depends on the kind of times you live in. If you live in high inflationary times, bids and estimates can be way different.
Yep. For one, if we're changing the bid section for state law, seems to me to have this section work in concert. That's my perspective. Other opinions or discussion?
Well, just to be clear, I haven't heard city staff say that 20% would be any problem from their perspective. Are we concerned that 20% gives city commission too much liberty to spend our money willy-nilly? And Mr. Hastings' example, if the estimate was 10,000, therefore it had to go to bid by the old, and it came in at 12,000, it seems like we can trust our people at 20%. That's the motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Madam
State
Chair.
law isn't 20%.
So, 10%, if it's a $100,000 project, okay. If it's, over by 10,000, that's a lot different than if it's a $10 million project and it's only over by $1 million, that's okay. So I think you got to think in terms of the scale of what this can be. So again, 10 doesn't seem to be causing a lot of problems. Is that what I heard the superintendent, or Mr. Klein, did you say that the 10% isn't a big problem, or?
I did not address the 10%, but so the way it works is every time we bid a project, as we're designing it, preparing the specs, the drawings and everything else, we have to prepare what's called an engineer's estimate. And that engineer's estimate establishes what we go out to bid for. So if it's a $100,000 or $10 million project, there are times when the bids come back that do exceed that 10%. That doesn't even give us an option to come back to City Commission to say, hey, how bad do you want this project? Do you want it to move now? Commission could still vote it down. We still have to have the money in the budget. So if it's a $10 million project and we only budgeted $10.5 million, we can't come back and award it because we need another $500,000 unless we find it from somewhere, whether we scrap another project because that one's a priority. So this 20%, really all it does is it gives us flexibility to come back to city commission and say, do you want this project? Do you want to award this? We found the money. We're not going to come to commission and say, do you want to award this? We have no idea how we're going to pay for it. We're going to come back to commission and say, do you want to award this? Here's how we lined up the funds. And then they can make that decision. They could say, no, it's 20%. We were only on board with 10%. That's completely fine. So it just gives flexibility to be able to move forward with things without having to go back through that entire process. And when it does exceed 10%, or if it's 20%, if it exceeds that 20%, you're not allowed to rebid the same project. You have to change the project somehow, whether that's schedule, whether that's design, no matter what it is, you have to do some sort of change to the project. So a lot of times that's re-engaging the consulting firm, paying them again to redo the project and redesign it and things like that. So it just happened recently on the landing. We still would not have awarded that project, but we did have to go back and start the design process again. So it is something that it can be cumbersome, it can delay things significantly and cost more money.
So your position is that 20% is a good idea and would be helpful?
My position is whatever this committee would like to do, but.
Good save.
Good answer.
I've got a question for him, if I can.
Mr. Schwager.
So, Aaron, there's a lot of times when a big money project is bid, your department will have alternate A, alternate B, alternate C. Can you explain that for this committee?
Yes, sometimes if we're bidding a project, say we're doing a water line project, or let's pick something a little easier. Let's do like a park project. Maybe we want to do a pavilion, but our budget doesn't necessarily fall in place. Maybe we have $100,000 in our budget. We designed everything. The pavilion puts it at $130,000, say. So we put that pavilion as an alternate. We're only bidding $100,000 because that's what was in the budget. But say a contractor comes in very aggressive. They come in at $80,000 on the base bid and the pavilion's still $30,000. Now it's $110,000 and I can award the pavilion as part of that overall project. So that's where the alternate comes in and it gives us the option. When we come to commission, we then say we are recommending awarding the base bid plus the alternate, and the commission can say, nah, we don't want the alternate, or they can say, yes, we do want it, and then we can move forward with awarding it or not. In other cases, that's where we could award it. There are definitely times when, say they came in at $100,000 on the base bid and the alternate was $30,000. Now we can't even recommend award of that option because it exceeded that 10%. So we can't even ask for permission to award it at that point.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, even though you don't want to answer, I'm just hearing that 20% would be a lot easier. Be a lot easier for you.
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Myers, could you call the roll?
And this is to increase it to 20%. A yes would be in favor. Jennifer Ashburn?
Yes.
Marianne Baxter?
Yes.
Abby Bemis?
Yes.
Diane Corso?
Yes.
Adriana Guerra?
Yes.
Billy Hill?
Yes.
David Miller?
Yes.
Mark Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Tim Schwanger?
Yes.
Elizabeth Semler?
Yes.
Tom Schrock?
Yes.
Jennifer Torres?
Yes.
Levada Wilson?
Yes.
Mike Zuloff?
Yes.
That passes.
Thank you. Section 43, general disqualification.
Chair, I'd like a motion that we change to the state ethics rules.
I second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I second.
Change
State
state ethics rules.
Ohio Ethics Commission.
Discussion.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zuloff.
I guess this has been criticized in that it's been argued that it's not specific enough in what do you do about it, right? So, yeah. no employee shall be directly interested in a contract, whatever, right? What do you do about it if they are? Right? So that's the criticism. It says, what's the process? How do you, and it's, I think it's a fair criticism.
Mr. Schwanger?
So, state law, which would be the Ethics Commission, in your experience, Mr. Hastings, have you ever seen in any of your cities where the Ethics Commission will come in and terminate a city employee or a city commissioner?
The Ethics Commission, it's actually a criminal statute. The Ethics Commission, Ohio ethics law, does not call for the firing of anybody, but it does describe certain activity as felony, which under state law would disqualify them from holding a position. So I have seen the Ohio Ethics Commission prosecute people. They have full-time staff there. They're experts in interpreting Ohio ethics law. Where our law, because our law differs a little bit slightly from Ohio ethics law, I don't think they would come in and enforce our law. I mean, their job is to enforce state law. And because it's criminal law, and because it's under the police power of the state, we don't have the power, even under home rule, to change that. In other words, we can't make something more lenient than state law would allow to prosecute. They still have whatever power Ohio ethics law gives them to prosecute someone, excuse me, for violating Ohio ethics law.
But if I can follow up, that doesn't touch our situation here, though, because I'm an advocate of making this more strict, whereby we do have a way of getting a city commissioner off the commission if he violates any of these issues. Same way with the city employee. Now, I've gone through a number of city charters. I do my homework. And there are a number of city charters that address that issue.
Yes.
By a two-thirds vote of city commission. If a commissioner is found in violation of this section, by two-thirds vote, they can remove that city commissioner from the board. And that's something that I would like to see, if I need to put that in a motion, that we have you draw up some kind of legislation that would penalize or remove a city commissioner if he's found to have violated the contracts or, what have you. And I'll use this as an example. There was a city commissioner, actually two commissioners, and I'm not going to mention their names, that were found in violation of ethics. And all the Ethics Commission did was tell the city commission as a body that they had to rescind all those ordinances that she had voted on, and that they could re-vote on it without her discussing or voting. So there really isn't any penalty that the Ethics Commission does, except...
No, I would disagree with that.
Well,
I've seen the Ethics Commission throw people in jail.
Yeah, they'll prosecute them, but
He just wants.
trust me when I say that we've had felons on the city commission. Okay? So I would like to see some...
Having committed a felony somewhere else, is that what you're...
It was from way back when.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah,
So,
there's no state prohibition against felons holding public office.
okay. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that you come up with some kind of language, a penalty or termination, or, there's just too many times when they violated and there's been no repercussion.
Now, are you referring to felonies that they may have committed in their past? Or are you talking
Well,
about
no, I'm talking
something?
about anything that's in here right now. Like right now, it does not address what we should do if any commissioner or city employee is found in violation of what's in this section.
And who does the finding of the violation?
That would be the Ethics Commission, I guess. I mean,
No, they don't find, they take people to court and a judge would do the finding.
right.
Or a jury.
Yeah, or jury.
But then that would fall back then, if you want to go with state law with Ethics Commission, then, and if the Ethics Commission finds a violation, then we could write something in here that would, that we
You
would
can
dis-
have, some charters have a provision, and I guess my recommendation would be to follow what some other charters have done, just by a mere 4/5 or whatever it is vote, that a commissioner can be removed from the commission for whatever reason. And the reason I say it that way is if we give reasons, the only reasons that they can be removed from the commission, then their defense is, well, wait a second, who found those reasons? You know, you didn't take me to court, a jury didn't decide that.
Okay.
I have a constitutional right to have this tried somewhere. But you can put in a charter that the commission has the power with a supermajority vote to remove a commissioner for any reason.
Okay. I'll make that motion.
Believe there's a current motion on the floor to modify this section to state that we follow the state ethics rules, and that has had a second, so.
I'm sorry,
Further discussion?
I didn't hear a second.
Yes.
No.
I didn't hear it. Oh, thank you.
I did a long
Thank
time
you.
ago.
Thank you, yeah.
Further discussion here?
Madam Chair.
I would say I'm a little lost on the problem that we're trying to solve for. I've heard
Madam
one
Chair.
from Mr. Schwanger, but.
Madam Chair, would there be a possibility that we follow the Ohio Ethics Commission and then with a caveat of what Mr. Hastings is maybe amending the current? I don't know if that would please the commission or not to include both parts. I don't know.
Madam Chair.
I think Mr. Lalaka.
I'm confused, Tim. I need just a little bit more clarification on what you're asking for. Because in one side, if we're giving the commissioners the power to remove someone, I have a problem with that because it might not be, once again, the basic commissioners that better serve our community. And I'm just confused on, are you asking if someone commits a crime within their position or if they commit a crime outside of their position?
Oh, no, it would be a city commission, like, you know, if they're voting on an ordinance, that there's a conflict, like maybe this person owns a business and they're voting on,
Okay, yeah,
They're
I
kind of-
thought that's exactly
Yeah.
where you were.
yeah, I'm not going, yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Zuloff.
Yeah. The only thing this thing says the city commission can do is to declare a contract void, is what I'm reading. I don't even know if they can do that. I mean, you know, if the city has a contract with somebody and, oh, well, someone had a conflict of interest, we're going to declare this void, and the person you've contracted with said, oh, no, you're not. You can't unilaterally declare a contract void, I don't think, unless there's some provision in Ohio Revised Code that permits that. We can't make up our own contract law here. And I mean, we're a home rule facility, but as far as I know, we can't make up our own rules regarding, contract law, can we?
That is normally a power of local self-government with a number of exceptions.
I mean, we're kind of a UCC state, right? I mean, universal, yeah, UCC.
But yeah, and the U.S. Constitution
UCC.
has something to say about contracts as well. But
Uniform Commercial Code is what I'm trying to say, UCC. Uniform Commercial Code is, kind of used all over the country. You can't just unilaterally, or can you?
some contracts are void, which means they were never a contract.
Okay.
Some contracts are voidable, which means that the city commission can vote to void them.
Okay.
And some contracts are not voidable. Actually, the majority of them are not voidable. Under the U.S. Constitution, we are not allowed to break contracts.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because it's been pointed out to me by others that they've alleged conflicts and said, and the city commission hasn't done anything about it. And I'm going like, well, what can they do? And they also complain that that they have no power to do anything about it. And should we rely solely on the discretion of a state office all the way down to ours away in Columbus to decide whether something rises? We have local courts. I mean, why
That's where they
should?
would go. They would go to court if they thought that someone had violated the ethics law. I'm sure they would talk to them first, as apparently they did to us in the past,
Yeah.
and suggest a solution to fix it if they didn't think it was that, serious enough to warrant jail time, and that they have the prosecutorial discretion to make those decisions. What we do with regard to people's office is a different issue. That's not a criminal statute. That's a civil removal.
And we further say that you can't take gratuities, you can't accept free tickets and stuff, and then say nothing about what the penalty is for that. You can't do it. Okay, what if you do it? What do you do about it?
Well, the Ohio Ethics Commission does say something about that.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Mr. Hastings, can you explain to me so Ohio Ethics exists, this small 2 paragraphs exists in our charter for 2 issues, taking gifts and receiving benefit from contracts. What's the relationship between situations that arise that are not addressed here? I mean, we consult Ohio Ethics frequently, do we not? So do they generally govern us on all
Every elected official
issues?
is required, actually, I am required by law to provide them with a copy of the Ohio Ethics Law, which is about 28 pages. And the state of Ohio provides me an explanation of Ohio Ethics Law, which I think is around 36 pages.
So we are all, that supersedes this charter? We have to follow the law?
Yeah, the criminals, yes, home rule does not allow us to make something that's illegal, legal.
Okay. Mr. Schwanger?
Diane, did you want to make that as an amendment to his motion? To go with,
I made the original motion, and yeah, before, so I got confused, and I appreciate everybody's passion, but the purpose of this committee, we're an advisory committee, it's almost like we're trying to solve problems that aren't ours to solve, spending time talking about things that aren't pertinent. All we're trying to do is try and make the city better if we can. We're trying to identify problems, if we think it's a problem, and try and make a recommendation. We have no power. We're just making recommendations that we think might help the city be better. So I wouldn't amend my motion, and I wouldn't mind if we voted on it.
Okay. Ms. Myers?
A yes will be that it defers to state rules, correct?
Yes.
Please.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
A yes would be that it defers to state law.
So it is, are we striking this section of the charter then? Is that what that means?
You could say we follow state law or strike it.
Recommend to the commission that they consider doing this.
Recommend.
That's what we're recommending.
Yes.
Jennifer
Our
Ashburn.
job.
Yes.
Mary Ann Baxter.
Yes.
Abby Bemis.
Yes.
Diane Corso.
Yes.
Adriana Guerra.
Yes.
Billy Hill.
Yes.
David Miller. Mark Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Tim Schwanger.
nay.
Elizabeth Semler.
Yes.
Tom Sharaf.
Yes.
Jennifer Torres.
Yes.
Levada Wilson.
Yes.
Mike Zuloff.
Yes.
Yes.
Move to adjourn.
You have to cover these. Any items of old business? Any items of new business?
Move to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, thank you all.
That's exhausting, so now.
Yes.
It's only 5 after 7.
Yeah, well,